I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Today, we are taking a break from court coverage to talk about the Netflix series Baby Reindeer. I'm going to have a lot of spoilers today. And so, if you have not seen the series, and if you did want to look at it, because there are some really heavy themes in this series, and there might be some things there are some things that are understandably triggering. And I was a little apprehensive about watching it at first because I just wasn't sure. So I've been covering a lot with the Daybell trial, with the Christopher Gregor trial. Like there was just all of this heavy stuff that I was covering. So I wasn't sure how this was going to go. To me, I think this series was done beautifully. I skipped through parts of episode 4. So episode 4 has some pretty heavy depictions of SA, and for my own personal, just for me, I skipped over that portion. But just watching it, oh my gosh. I started, I was like, oh, I'm just going to watch one episode. And I ended up watching all seven. I was cleaning out my closet. I did this on Mother's Day. Like who does? But like I had some time to myself and I watched it. And we're also going to talk about the individual who's come forward and said that she is the real Martha. I have some thoughts on that interview. I'm going to be careful talking about it because this is a real individual. And I do think the Netflix series could have done some things and worded things in a way that could have protected this individual a little bit more. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So somebody did end up watching that part. It is very, very heavy. When I saw it, I didn't think that the character Martha was like a villain, or because to me, of the show, the actor, Richard Gadd, which in the Netflix series, he calls himself Donnie. To me, the role he plays there, he shows like his flaws. He shows what's going on with him. And please let me know if y'all have questions, things that y'all would like for me to definitely cover with this. But in looking at this, let's see if my PowerPoint works. Okay. This is my disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. I cannot diagnose the fictional Martha. This is not a psychological evaluation. I also won't be talking about any potential diagnoses um, for anyone involved in this. Just my clinical impressions and what I've seen based on what's available. There is also a content warning for this one for SA, stalking, DV, grooming, and then any type of like harm. And the reason why I have to talk around certain words is because YouTube will restrict videos if some things are said. And so that's why we have to do this. Let's start with the fact that the story opens with this is a true story. And the actor and producer Richard Gadd has come forward and said, emotionally, it's 100% true, but that there were adjustments that were made. And this isn't the exact truth, both for legal and artistic reasons. But when you start the show with not based on a true story, or if you don't have a disclaimer that says, things have been changed in order to protect the people involved. So I don't think that everything that happened in the show is exactly what happened between him and Martha. I think he took some creative liberty with the real life Martha. I think he made it work so that the show, because every episode ends with this massive just like cliffhanger, and you are just waiting for that for the next episode, which is why so many people binge watch this show. And if you're looking for any other psychologists or therapists or people that have talked about this series, I really appreciated the coverage of psychology in Seattle. I believe it is, Doctor Honda, I think. Y'all know me and names. I'm not great with names, and I have a link to his video down in the description where he talked about some of his thoughts about the interview with Piers Morgan. Ah, yes, Kirk Honda. Thank you, Mama Bear. I appreciate that. All right, and so I can understand why the real life person could get upset seeing that it was said that this is a true story, because I think some people even watching were thinking it was exactly this way. Now, I do think the show took a look at all of the emails, all of the text messages, that they took a look at all of that, and they did use some of the tweets, some of the emails, some of the messages word for word, which is why I think the internet did what the internet unfortunately does, and they were able to find her quickly. Now, Gad has come forward and said, because there are some allegations of who people think that the writer, the individual that essayed him, the male, I want to say, because it was Donnie, and then y'all know me in names, and I wrote it down too. Darren, yeah, me and names. But the other individual in the show, people have tried to figure out who that is, and Gad has said, "Please do not try to figure out who anyone is." If he wanted to come forward with his story with, outing some of that, he would, but that all of this was adapted from a stage play that he did back in 2019, and I don't think he realized that the show was going to have the impact that it has had, and that it has been tweaked for dramatic effect. And Spidey behavioral arts, he put out a video today, and I think I did link that video in the description as well, talking about the interview with Piers Morgan, and he mentioned the commitment principle, that sometimes as a performer you tell a story so many times and you do make some embellishments that it can still feel very like you kind of get committed to telling it a particular way, and for the way that works, for the way that kind of gets you the most of that. And so yes, Lisa, so you liked his assessment of it. Let me make this bigger, my writing is kind of small. All right, let's do that. All right, let me find my other screen. Let's all right, here we go. So in total, the Martha character sent, and I think this is accurate to what happened in real life as well, that there were over 40,000 emails, 350 hours of voicemail, over 700 tweets, 46 Facebook messages, and over 106 pages of letters. And from the very beginning, you can tell that in the story that's dramatized in the Netflix series, that Gad felt sorry for her, and that this is the story of two lost people. And to me, I ended up hurting for both of them, and that they both desperately wanted to feel seen. And it really was, Kelly, I agree. There was kind of an obsession on both ends, and that he liked the attention that she was giving him. And yet, and if it was all positive attention, he probably would have been able to accept it because he was in such a low place in his life. And I don't think he thought he deserved good things. And the fact that it was this "I love you, I hate you" type of relationship, it might have made their trauma bond even closer. And I do have a slide to talk specifically about trauma bonds. And there were certain quotes that he said the dialogue in this show, I think, is very, very powerful, and his inner monologue, how he describes how he was feeling and what he was going through, I thought all of that was very powerful. And so he said, "If this is all true, why can't you afford a cup of tea?" And this is where, because Martha comes in saying, "I'm this powerful lawyer. I can do all these things." She shows him all these people's phone numbers, but those could have just been the names of people in the phone and not necessarily their actual phone numbers, or the individual could have found their number in like a nefarious way. And so just because somebody has people's contact information doesn't necessarily mean that they are close. And there was this false sense of security that I think Martha knew that she had a captive audience, and she would just come right in because he mentioned she would say, "Oh, I have to go," but then stay for his entire shift doing a monologue and just talking. And as a bartender, you can't like it's his job to kind of listen to people, to be there. And it's different from a therapist because with a therapist, you have your hour. I'm going to hold you to a certain boundary. And Phoenix, oh, I don't understand how many of the claims, emails, tweets, voicemails, jail sentence, how all of that can't be verified. So I do think the emails, tweets, and voicemails can. I'm not sure if they took any liberty with the jail sentence. I am not sure. And Lisa, I do think that there are some personality characteristics that are definitely seen in this show. But I think there are some grandiose narcissistic type traits that are displayed in the Martha character. And then there are also, because anytime there was this fear of abandonment or rejection, Martha would engage in self-harm. And so I was feeling more of the puffed up sense of self and the need to put other people down and to make themselves great. And so the thing about individuals that have certain personality characteristics, sometimes they're really good at picking up on the emotions of others, but their perception of them or their ability to like interpret what that means, that can be the thing that really gets distorted. And we are going to go deeper into that a little bit later. He was very much aware of her behavior, and he seemed to be intrigued and have this empathy for her. And the empathy to me led to a codependence or this reliance or this trauma bond, because I think it went further than empathy. Because empathy is, "Oh, I feel for you. Maybe I give you a cup of tea," but it to me it went down this deeper road of, like him wanting to care for her almost, because I think he struggled in the show setting boundaries and limits with Martha because he was afraid of her emotional reaction, which can definitely happen. And that's where the book, Stop Walking on Eggshells, for individuals that have people in their lives with borderline personality disorder, that's where that ended up coming up. And Dr. G explains has a video because in preparing and researching this, he has a really old video on ways to say no to an individual with borderline personality disorder. And one of the things that you sometimes have to accept is that they might threaten self-harm, and if that happens, this is the safety plan, this is what you do, this is kind of how you move forward. I wanna see. Yes, yes, yes. I was definitely the way things are portrayed. Remember, I can't diagnose the real person, I can't diagnose, but in the show, I can diagnose fictional, not really. I can take a look at what might be happening with a fictional character, and I was very much getting those kinds of things. There was a comment in the show about, like, Martha's dad's big hands. That comment sat with me a little weird, and they did not go into that. And I think Martha was trying to make herself the victim, and I think they both desperately wanted one another's attention. And I do think she definitely misinterpreted any the attention for love. The attention for this means that he wants me, but then some of those like narcissistic type traits or that statement would come out where any man that doesn't want me must be gay or blind. And it's like, but and then I think for the character Donnie was struggling with their own sexuality, was struggling with not feeling masculine enough. And it's almost like Martha could pick up on that, and then she would use that as a weapon against Donnie when it was convenient or when, like, he was trying to set a boundary or kinda move away. I thought the statement of him loving her laugh, like, normally when you hear about a story of somebody being stalked to this level, you normally wouldn't hear positive aspects of the person. And I think this can definitely happen where a person can, if they're like and this doesn't happen in every case, but in this situation, because of where Donnie was with his undisclosed trauma, the fact that he could, like, make her laugh, or she would just start saying something and she would laugh. I think he liked that and almost got addicted to that as well, and so they both wanted acceptance, and I did think it was important for us to talk about trauma bonds versus healthy bonds. So, a trauma bond is all highs and lows. And in a normal relationship, there are going to be some ups and downs, there are going to be some dips, but it's not going to be this like, you know, gigantic roller coaster all the time. And to me, the show did a phenomenal job showing these high highs, we're on top of the world, we're doing great, to these very low lows, sometimes within minutes of each other. Where the coffee shop scene stood out to me, where they go out for coffee after him saying he didn't wanna do the picnic, and she initially doesn't know what to order. She says she doesn't have money, and then once he says he'll pay for it, she perks up, and she's ordering, like, she doesn't order, like, 1 thing, she orders, like, 4 things, and it was just very, very strange. Um You don't so a trauma bond is like, we need each other. We can't survive without each other. And one of the biggest displays of that I felt was that moment when he could no longer have contact with her anymore, and then things flipped to him then, like, that being almost being unsafe, where he was then wondering and longing, like, I wonder how she's doing, and wanting, at least with, like, the constant communication, the 80 emails a day, he knew how she felt. He knew what was going on. And within a healthy bond, we each keep our own identity, and, like, if we're together, that's great. If we're not together, if something doesn't work out with the friendship, we might be sad, we might be disappointed, but we would be okay. And so there are cluster B personality traits. And within those traits, there are histrionic, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. And I want to say, did I say histrionic? Yes, I already did. And then also psychopathic. And to me, in my opinion, the the antisocial part would come up when a boundary was set. So I didn't see the antisocial kind of all the time. That was my own personal observations. I saw more of the I'm entitled, I deserve this. But then there was this by any means necessary. If so almost more of a manipulation, that I'll do anything to get my way. And in the show, that's what ends up leading to jail time. uh Yes. And so that's what happens in the show. Yeah. I hope I hope that's helpful. Um oh, because I don't think in the show, I don't think Martha had a very good self-esteem at all. I think they probably had some insecurities, but then it comes out at other people. And that's where with the real life Fiona, making negative comments about the actress that was playing that character, to put that person down, to me, that's a bit of a red flag for me because, yes, that's a bit of a red flag for me. We will leave that there. All right. Um, and but Phoenix, they kind of both are. They kind of both are, and but I think he's successful now, and he's getting positive attention as well. Does that make sense? Now and but to me, I think the way he told his story, I think it can be helpful for people that are in a situation like that. And I believe in the UK, there has been an increase in people reporting these types of behaviors because some people might think like, "Oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad." Or I don't know, like sometimes people can minimize it in their own mind, and to me, I think the show beautifully showed that back and forth. We are also going to cover because the real life Fiona wants $1 million from Piers Morgan's show because the interview has blown up. The last time I checked this morning, it was at 10 million views. It's probably at a lot more than that now. Um, and so we're gonna take a look at that article a little later. Back to trauma bonds. uh the other person's needs are more important than my own, and within a healthy relationship both of our needs are honored and respected. I skipped the I hate you, I love you, that back and forth, that black and white aspect to the relationship. And within a healthy relationship, I still love them even when I'm angry with them, and it's not this like I hate you, don't leave me. It's not this like black or white. Like we were able to live in the gray. Within a trauma bond, you ignore red flags and unacceptable behavior. Within a healthy relationship or healthy bond, there's trust and boundaries. And then within a trauma bond, you think that they'll change, eh, like everything will get magically better. And one of the biggest quotes, and I think I have it on a different slide later, was when Donnie, the character Donnie, said, wow, like she really did have restraint. So during that period of time that there was no contact, that he was surprised that she really did have restraint. Within a healthy bond, you focus on growing separately and while also together. There's honest communication and both people's needs are met. Within a trauma bond, like there's nobody else, like nobody else will ever love me the way they do. Like it's a very like Romeo Juliet, not healthy kind of thing. And then there are stages to trauma bonding, and you saw that in the show, where it starts off with this love bombing, excessive flattery and praise, because the person has to hook them for like what comes in stage 3. And then after love bombing is trust and dependency, and that's why some of the excessive phone calls, sometimes individuals with narcissistic traits, they wanna dominate your time. They they want to be like because they don't want you to talk to anyone else. They don't want you to be with anyone else. They like excessively, and this is just certain types of people with those types of traits might engage in that type of behavior where it's all consuming because they get jealous if they think you might be with somebody else, and we saw that in the show. There can be this criticism, blaming and criticizing the partner to make them feel bad about themselves. There can be gaslighting, manipulating the partner into thinking that they are the crazy one. There can be addiction. The partner feels emotionally addicted to the positive reinforcement that comes after the harm because they know within that cycle there's going to be a like a honeymoon phase again, and they can kind of get addicted to that part. The partner can lose their sense of self, who they are, what they want. And then there can be this resignation and submission. And I do think if Martha had left Donnie's family alone, I think he might, I don't know that he would have completely cut it off. I think the more dangerous it got for his family and all of that, I think that's when it stepped outside of the 2 of them and it was the family. I think that's that's what happened. The people who come from enmeshed families have greater risk of getting into a romantic relationship. And so individuals who were raised to be responsible for their parents' emotions, to if they were parentified, because sometimes they can end up taking that caregiver role. To me in the show, Donnie was the one that was taking care of Martha, that felt bad for Martha to the point of following her home. Like that was weird in the show. And yes, I don't know what to believe and not believe from the Fiona interview, cuz she denied that that happened in real life, and I don't know what to believe and not to believe. It made it really, really hard. So Dr. Honda agreed. And I did watch some of his coverage, and I do agree. I also saw some because with the self-harm, uh and sometimes when caught or to maintain that manipulation, sometimes someone with narcissistic traits might engage in self-harm. Sometimes males are more likely to be diagnosed with narcissism, and then females are are more likely to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. When sometimes like, and so that's where it'll be interesting once they continue to revise the DSM, and as we talk about complex trauma, how different diagnoses change, and so. So there is a phenomenal expert in this particular area. His name is Dr. Oh my gosh, y'all know. Like I had it. Like Dr. Court, Dr. Joe Court. We are mutuals over on Instagram. I have attended some of his trainings in LGBTQ mental health. He was one of the first individuals to write a book on, I think, like, I don't know, like he's a pioneer and a whole bunch. And one of the things that he talks about is abuse can confuse or disorient. It does not orient. And I saw a recent video of his where nobody has like thought that they were gay and then experienced some type of harm that was heterosexual, and then thought, "Oh no, now I'm heterosexual." Like that normally doesn't happen in our society. We have a lot of like homophobia. Even individuals that do identify as queer or gay often have to battle internalized homophobia and gender roles, and what makes, a man, and this was back in like the early, because I feel like on TV the portrayal of gay men has gotten more diverse, because I remember when I was growing up in like the 90s, 2000s, early 2000s, it was mostly more of like a flamboyant, like you didn't see like a masculine guy as like a gay man. Like you didn't really see that as much. And so there were ways in which people could really feel. And I think in the show, Martha picked up on the fact that Donnie might have had some insecurities about, because she talked about his like how masculine he was, but then she would go back around and then make negative comments about him later. Yes, heteronormity. That is how our society is, and we have to actively undo some of that. And I'm very open about my own journey with that, and some of my own even bias. I mentioned on another show that one time I knew that a mom and a stepmom were going to come to a session, and my brain immediately went to, oh, stepmom, that must, like, why is dad's mom, like wife or girlfriend or whoever, coming? But it was mom's partner." And it was like, oh, like in my brain, hearing it on the phone, I never even thought about that. And so, um, this was one of the most horrific parts. Like, she could tell, but I think he liked that she could see into him in that way because his family didn't know. His girlfriend didn't know. Nobody else saw him that way. And I think there was a part of him that felt comfort in this broken person seeing my brokenness and us being broken together. Like, there is some, like, I don't know, like, there can be some comfort in that, but then she would use that against him. So that's the part that was a bit problematic. And so individuals that have experienced any type of harm, sometimes they then have to go through the process of, you know, how would I have felt this way? Would I have had this attraction had this thing not happen? And that's where working with a sex therapist, so somebody who specializes and one that is knowledgeable about LGBTQ mental health, because I think that can be really important. This is really problematic when it happens to young children that are prepubescent or that haven't had experiences, like age appropriate, that haven't, when that part of them is turned on too young, that can be very, very confusing. And I've seen some people, like, because of their situation, they once again, there's that confusion that can happen, but working through the trauma, sometimes people can feel more grounded. And so I want to see what all right, there we go. Uh so I think it was yes and. I think she did zero in on his trauma, and I do think it was for manipulation later, because in the show she would use anything that she knew against him. All right. So let's keep going with the slideshow. All right, let's go. All right. Anytime he backed away, that would trigger, a reaction, and he noticed that there were once and that she found his email. He didn't in the show, he didn't give her his email. She found it on his website for his comedy, and she had Googled him before he had Googled her, it sounds like. And, and the messages would say that they were sent from an iPhone, but he didn't see her having an iPhone. And, I think in the show, you saw this drawer with multiple phones. And, I talked about the coffee incident, found his website. He set a boundary about not telling his coworkers about his comedy, and of course, that was violated later. Like, no boundary was off limits. And I like that they showed how his curiosity kind of drug him deeper, and that sometimes, like, that he wasn't completely innocent in the situation. And what I mean by that is, like, when he was trying to entrap her, he was trying to get her to leave a threatening voicemail so that the police could use that against her. And like, I because I'm sure if somebody is in a situation like that and they just desperately want to be free, the desperation that a person would kind of go to. And so that's where I did not watch the show thinking, like, "Oh my gosh, Martha is the worst person ever and he's this angel." Like, I really did just see this, like, eerie, beautifully, like written. Like, this just it was so many emotions, and I'm so glad that we get to talk about it. Um, all right. And then we talked about that part. Okay, good. Donnie desperately wanted to be seen by others. When asked about his superpower that he would want, he said that he would want to know what other people were thinking. He didn't think people thought of him at all. And that loneliness, that sadness, that and I think he thought fame would help him feel more seen, and I can tell you, so I have a video right now that's doing very well, and anytime on YouTube I have a video that's doing well, there are people that absolutely hate me in those comments. Absolutely hate. And that with visibility, you get more critics. People do get more critical of you, and I'm glad that he was able to work through his thoughts on things with the stage play, with all of this other things. Um, this didn't feel as much like a trauma dump. So like the Risa Tisa, that whole and I was honest, I could not make it through all because it's hours and hours. It's a lot of videos. I could not make it through all of that story. But a part of that was, I think, just the storytelling. Like, this was the first time she was telling her story. If she made it into, like, a 2, 3-hour or multiple episode story, I probably could, because people would sit down and they would, like, write out the story, and it would go in a way that, like, made sense in my brain. He had a lot of time to work this one out, and parts of this seem to be coming from a more healed place. Like, I had hope for him at the end of it. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but I did have more hope for it. Hope for him at the end. She saw him, he felt seen. Exactly. Yes. And this is the certified in sex therapy, also AASECT. And I personally worked with somebody because sometimes if you have history of trauma that's leading to sexual dysfunction, working with a sex therapist can be like phenomenal and amazing. And, I went all the way to Maryland to find the person that was the right fit. I had the resources, and now we have telehealth, and so I probably but being there in the office, in person, it was very, very helpful. And, individuals that are trained, because most therapists don't have deep knowledge about human sexuality, like deep knowledge. They might not know about LGBTQ mental health. So I work a lot with clients across. So some individuals that are asexual, that are um non-binary. Like I work with a lot of different individuals, and so I regularly get additional training in these fields to just kind of help myself be able to support my clients. He was so vulnerable. So vulnerable. And this happens a lot, and it happens a lot in Hollywood. We just have to look to the whole, like, the allegations that are against, Diddy, and the different allegations against other famous people out there. And I will say that sometimes the individual that's causing that harm, sometimes their own, like, I'm so amazing, I'm so awesome, and they see, like, they might feel that the person wants them, but, like, or some people use their power to, I don't know, like, they use their power in not so safe ways. I think consent is incredibly important, and, that did not happen, for Donnie in that 5 years before he met Martha. I like that they showed how he was before, that he was happy, he was more confident, like, even when he was messing up and he was struggling, that he was still continuing to work on things and go with things, and so, alright. So after he followed her home, he did finally Google her, and things came up, including her history of, and this is in the show, the history of stalking and then he still accepted her Facebook request. And, like, I just thought that it really was honest that he said, "If you aren't living a life worth living, can someone ruin it at all?" And I just thought that was so powerful. He was in such a low place and didn't feel like he deserved anything, that at least she was talking to him. At least 'cause he might have even kind of looked at her like a friend almost, but to me, he was more of a friend to her. There would be periods of time where she might stroke his ego or talk, but really, in my from what I saw, it was very one way because she would come into his workplace and dominate the conversation. Like, to me, I think she was getting a lot out of it, and yeah, it was very, very strange. So then he, because of his own shame about wanting to date a trans woman and just kind of explore some of his just as he's questioning his sexuality, the actual actor Richard has come out as bisexual. And but Donnie in the show changed his name and profession, and he's dating a therapist. And he didn't mean to fall in love. He didn't mean to end up liking Terry as much as he did, but she really just was his difficulty with physical intimacy with her, to me, was rooted in his past the essay, and he really needed to work through that. And the fact that visualizing the harm from Martha helped him in the bedroom, like, that part just let you know just how dark, just how broken he really was to me. Martha's jealousy comes out and, resulting in physical harm towards Terry. And Terry told him, "To you, she is harmless and sympathetic. There is a reason you are keeping her around." And I think Donnie probably felt seen by Terry as well, but it was more to me, I felt like it was more like a therapist. Like, I felt like, and like a lover, but also kind of a therapist. I'm surprised. And the real person might have told him to go to therapy, but like, uh, he definitely needed to talk to someone. All right. And so this is so the top part is Richard Gadd asking people to not speculate about the real life people, that really wasn't the point of the show, but really things weren't changed enough to really protect those people, in my opinion. But he said that, like, Sean Foley was not the individual being portrayed because people were going on the internet were kind of going after that. Um, in episode 4, this is the really, 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 this is the episode that has a lot that you saw that too? Hope ate fear. You're so right. So right. Yeah. Uh, I'm gonna go back to that one. I have to take a little break from it. I did I think his curiosity got the best of him. So I was watching this almost like he was my client, and I was getting to see what he was going through. And he's not my client, of course, and but like I had my therapist lens on, and so many things happened in the show that I couldn't have seen, I couldn't have predicted. And how they told the story, it made sense that his curiosity, because I think he just knew she wasn't as successful as she said she was. Because I think before he followed her home, she had talked about moving into new houses and having this phenomenal house and doing all these things. And I think there was a part of him that just knew it was a lie and he had to see it for himself. But seeing it for himself didn't make him like, I think it made him have more empathy for her, if that makes sense. Like, I think him seeing it made him kind of, like, feel like she needed him more. It's very, very odd to me. Um, and therapists can have their own issues and definitely need to make sure, like, that's why I think therapists definitely need their own therapist. And because even the fact that Terry, now this is how he portrayed it in the show, I don't know what happened in real life, thank goodness, I don't need to know. But the way it was portrayed in the show, Terry thought that she could talk to Martha as a therapist and, like, get her some help. And it was like, no, that was the worst thing that Terry could do, especially as Donnie's lover. And like that was going to cause major, major problems. Yes. Terry was a therapist in the show. Yes. All right. Whew. All right. Let's keep going. I thought some of the dialogue around that after the trauma, he engaged in a lot of risky sexual activity, almost wanting to be. And so this is the SA trigger warning. Um, because then that one incident wouldn't be like the only thing he had to hold on to. Oh, so she was just my bad. She was just a therapist in general, not his therapist. Okay. Just a therapist, not his therapist. Because he lied. He told her that, yeah, so they met on a dating app, and she was a therapist, not his therapist. Hope I didn't say that wrong. Yes, perfect. All right. So in talking about his reckless need, or his wanting to shed his body, and just how what happened made him feel less masculine. And once again, that goes back to the heteronormative thing within society, where yeah, it just goes back to all of that. All right. And in the reporting it to the policeman, so when he did go in to make the first report, he admitted that he hadn't told enough for the policeman to take it seriously, but there was a part of him that was kind of holding back in it. And I just thought all of the insight into his own behavior and into everything that was going on, I thought it was very, very good. Ugh. Um, and Sanders, we are gonna get to this, but we can go on ahead and say it now. I don't think he would have told his parents if she wasn't threatening to tell them. But in telling his parents, his dad was able to come forward with what had happened to him when he was a boy growing up in the Catholic Church. Like, that part almost, like, that part was, like, for the entire show, it was just very, very powerful. My camera froze. Hopefully, my computer will decide to come back. I hate it when this happens. I promise I am plugged into the wall. I try to do all the things to have it work. If I have to reset, I will be right back. Let's see if it does it on its own. Let's see if I stop sharing. Nope. All right. I might have to reset. I will be right back. Give me 1 second. Y'all. Always, always. I know, it paused at, like, the perfect point. Thank y'all for staying. Good gosh. Uh, let's go on ahead and okay. All right. So I'm not gonna skip ahead. Um, let me see what else we had on that one. I did the PowerPoint to just organize my brain and my thoughts, because there was a lot with this show. Um, the fact that he missed her messages when he was no longer when they did put the protective order in place, and described it as a strange, eerie silence. and him worrying that he would be the reason, that he would get a letter saying that, like, he was the reason why she, like, trigger warning for unaliving. And she didn't do that, and so but he was afraid that that would happen. And he specifically made the statement, "It was like she had restraint all along." And that's where some of that magical thinking or hope can come in, where the person may think, "Oh, like, they're not as bad as it seemed," or maybe things will be okay. And all right. And so I did want to show I found some really great clips, and I have the full links down below. Uh,
We do know about, like her trip to jail and the fact that she had multiple phones, access to his phone number.
all right, so I'm going to restart this one. So this right here is an interview with the Sun, and this is how a reporter found the real life person within a very short period of time. All right, so let's go ahead and watch this. And it's going to play a few clips from the Piers Morgan episode.
In the course of your relationship with Richard Gadd, you send him 41,000 emails, 350 voice messages, 744 tweets, 48 Facebook messages, and
So the part that got me in this interview are the parts where she looks up as though she's trying to remember if that was true. So this is Fiona Harvey. She's come forward with her name. So she was the one that came. Well, I think the internet found her first. She has a public Facebook page. Please don't go to the Facebook page. Um, and there are recommendations for her to make it private. I don't think she will, just because, yes. And after she's wanted more money for because of this interview, Piers Morgan thinks that she may try to, like, get an agent or something. Okay. Um to me, in the show, Richard Gadd showed a lot of, like, self awareness, and in my opinion, there's not a lot of self-awareness that I personally saw within this interview. That's it. Yes.
106 letters.
That's simply not true. If somebody was sending somebody 41,000 emails or something, they'd be doing how many a day?
I think it was difficult to watch. It was obviously very interesting to see, the real life Martha's take on things, but it is so drastically different from what is portrayed in Richard Gadd's version of events on the Netflix program. We obviously know a lot about the real life Martha, and she obviously contested a lot of that with Piers. I felt like maybe he could have pushed her a little bit further on some of those points that we do know about, like her trip to jail and the fact that she had multiple phones, access to his phone number, all of which she denied on the program. But it was quite groundbreaking to see, her side of the story.
All of this would come out in a court case.
In disclosure, yes.
And you're prepared to do that?
Yes. Because I didn't write him the emails.
Who do you think did?
I have no idea. I think he probably made them up himself. I've no idea.
I think people would find the fact that she denied, the 41,000 emails, the hundreds of voicemails, the tweets, as quite revelationary, because people have found evidence of that online, and there must have been some evidence of that in order for the series to have a basis at all. For me, the most shocking part was the turn of phrases that Fiona used to describe Richard. She said that he was psychotic, misogynistic. The way that she shifted the narrative, to me, was the bombshell in itself. I found the identity of real life Martha probably about 5 or 6 minutes after watching the first 3 episodes of the screening, which I didn't think it was going to be that easy, but just from watching the first 3 episodes, there were some keywords I was able to pull out: lawyer, MP, disabled son, things that Richard Gadd had found out online about Fiona Harvey. And within 5 minutes, I found an article online from 2004, which actually named Fiona and linked her to a very, very similar crime to that, which is detailed in the.
And the wife of the victim from the MP, from whatever what was portrayed in the show, that person has come forward and said that, like, that it was true, that portion was true, that this individual did um stalk them. Like that's what they said.
Netflix program. So it did really take only 5 minutes, and then obviously finding photos of her online and trying to match her up with what the Netflix portrayal of her was with Jessica Gunning. It was, I would say, quite easy, though I am fairly internet savvy, but many people on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit were very easily able to find her identity within days and confirm it pretty much, 100% before this interview.
Netflix have said that these details are the real ones. That this is exactly
completely incorrect.
Well, Benjamin Kane from Netflix came out this morning saying that they really did take as many precautions as they possibly could to, keep Martha's.
And I personally don't think because they kept. So if you haven't watched the whole show, there are portions of where text comes across the screen, and it's my understanding that some of those are exactly what was said, real tweets that still existed and that were still like in his feed from a long time ago. And so ooh, like that's ooh. And so that's where another psychologist or therapist that I saw cover this mentioned that maybe he could have deleted some of those, but it is what it is.
Identity hidden. Could they have done more? Possibly, but then would it have affected the story? Maybe, and this is Richard Gadd's story, his life tale about his experience of being at the hands of a serial stalker. The whole point of the story, I guess, was to showcase what he'd been through. And as he said at the screening to the press, the people that were there, he wanted to share this part of his life in order to help other people who had been through similar experiences come forward and hope that it would be,
And that's where, so this is why I wanted to talk about the show, because I had never seen this type of trauma bond portrayed in this way, where there was a mix going back and forth. I would watch the Piers Morgan interview. There are some portions, there are multiple versions of the same story that's given in that one interview where I only met him 1 or 2 times, and then by the end of the interview, they're good friends. The details change based on, and I don't know if it's pathological or compulsive, but there's definitely some differences in perception, and that's me being very kind. Definitely some differences in perception.
inspirational for other men who had been stalked or abused. So it's difficult, really, because they could have obviously done more to conceal the identity in my eyes. However, if they'd done that, perhaps they wouldn't have been, doing Richard's story justice. Switching from one story to another, perhaps she doesn't even quite remember how it happened. It was quite a long time ago. But, it's difficult because we've seen Richard's portrayal of the events. Now we've heard about what Fiona thinks. They're obviously drastically different, and it's turned into this kind of he said, she said row. But I think what's important is to not take away from Richard's victim statement, which I guess is the entirety of the show itself.
I was talking to somebody, it's pretty rude to interrupt. So he seemed to be obsessed with me from that moment.
I think the entirety of this now lies in the hands of Richard Gadd. It was his testament, his story, and at the screen.
And he's come forward and said that he's not going to say anything else about it, that he never thought the show would be number 1 in the UK. It's now number 3 in the US when I looked at Netflix today, but he didn't think it was going to get the recognition, the views and all of that. I do think it might win some awards. I think it was beautifully done. It is one of, I think, the most well-written and portrayed things that I have seen in a while, especially in showing the effects of this type of back and forth trauma bond. The way that he portrayed it, I think was very accurate for things that I've I've heard clients say in session, but I didn't have a like visual. And I've had a few clients that have brought up the show, and I knew enough about it to talk with them about it. But now that I've watched the whole thing, the clients that do need to process anything or that do like want to talk about aspects of the show, now having seen it, like that's something that I can do in like in therapy.
Screening, he said, he wanted to put this chapter of his life to bed, and that's why he made Baby Reindeer, to get it out there, to embrace it. He said, I couldn't keep going like I was going inside, and I needed to get away from this dark turn. So the whole show was his way of, voicing what happened to him. I think it's therefore his decision whether or not he wants to come forward and show proof. I don't think necessarily that would bode too well for, in the wider respects, victims to have to come forward and show a relative amount of proof in order to be believed. I think we should try and,
But that's where I wish the show had said inspired by a true story, or because the show opens with this is a true story. And I think that's different if it's a play or if it's I don't but like I wish it had said based on a true story, and then at the end had a disclaimer about, details have been changed to protect the identities, or I wish there had been just a little bit more. That's just my thoughts. Thank you so much, Sanders. I really do enjoy covering these topics. It's so odd that this was a break from like some of the other coverage, but I really did. And watching the show, I didn't come away personally feeling heavy, but I did have my clinical eyes on. And I did fast forward through about 10-15 minutes of episode 4. Episode 4, I was pretty sure for my own personal comfort, I knew it was going to go a bit further. Just with I think he does a very but it was gonna be too realistic that could have been secondary trauma for me personally, and so that's why I didn't do it. And I don't know if she just wants to settle because I don't think she has I don't know that it's slander, I don't know, and I think criminal records in the UK, I think they're not it's my understanding. I saw some lawyers talk about it. It's I don't know that we can have access to know did she really and maybe she didn't really go to jail, so, like, that guilty plea at the end, because in the Piers Morgan I might try to find it, but in the Piers Morgan interview, when he shows her that clip, she's because 'cause they're saying dates, and they're giving times, and she's looking up, and she's going, "No." But it's like was it the wrong dates or was it the wrong period of time? It was very, very strange. She goes from saying that she has a photographic memory, and this is the real Fiona, to saying that like she can't remember certain things. And it's a very, very strange thing. But I don't know that because it is his story and ooh, I don't know. If they had used her name, maybe maybe, if they had used her oh, so, like, for using because I guess public tweets, I think, can be used because for Twitter, I think if you tweet something, somebody can republish your tweets and profit from it, I think. Like, I think it's in Twitter's user agreement, I think. Something weird.
take both sides of the story and put together what we think and feel about it based on the evidence that we can see, without putting pressure for more evidence to be put out there. I think if Richard Gadd is satisfied with the version of the story he's put out, he shouldn't feel the need to explain. We have a habit in the media these days of whenever we are able to uncover a villain or a criminal, that they tend to end up in the public eye, and actually perhaps some of them find that quite enjoyable. I don't think Fiona is necessarily after the limelight, but it has given her an opportunity to take it. And I do think that is quite a dangerous turn of events, giving someone who's accused of quite serious crimes and has been, whether she denies it or not, jailed previously for stalking crimes. I don't necessarily think it's the right thing to do for her to have too much space to speak, because I do think it takes away from Richard's version of events, which are true or not true, or if they've been emphasized in any way, which I personally believe they haven't, you know, the story's still there, the story's still important, and the focus shouldn't really be taken away from the importance of the story. And, you know, charities today have come forward. There's one charity in the UK saying that they've had an 80% increase of male victims of abuse coming forward. That's staggering after watching Baby Reindeer. So I think that's the important part of the entirety of the series, and that we should perhaps, you know, try and turn away from too much attention on Fiona, because she might take it the wrong way and think that she has the power to, you know, try and excuse some of the behaviors which took place.
So I have the full link to that interview down below. I thought that was very well, I thought that reporter did a very good job talking about the concerns. I originally was going to cover the entire interview, but I really wanted to leave it with the resources that Richard Gadd talked about, because male victims of stalking, because I think he specifically said, if I was a woman, if I was a woman and a man was sending me, you know, 80 emails a day, would that be stalking? And the fact that it's a woman, sometimes those things aren't taken as seriously. Sometimes the sentences aren't as long, and we've really seen an increase, especially with like teachers and these people in places of authority that are female, doing inappropriate things to male, and there was a time when people would almost look at that like, because I remember there were rappers that would brag about like their first time being with an older woman or something when they were like 14 or younger. And to me, that's not appropriate. That can open people up for victimization, and that they might not realize until a lot later. And so I did just want to make sure, and I have the resources because in the Netflix series, they have the program Want to Talk About It, and I do have that website listed in the description. I am just going to share because it's a true thing and it's happening. So, the real Martha has wants £1 million, a million euros. Is it euros, pounds, whatever because I think they stopped euros. They still do euros. Y'all tell me in the chat. Do they still do euros? But she wants $1.225 million for her interview. And I think Piers Morgan has done an interview talking about this. She said that she was offered $315 or 215 pounds. I want to say that's pounds. And Piers Morgan said that they had somebody do her hair and makeup. And I think she saw the success of the interview, and yeah. And so the interview, I did watch it. I did watch the entire thing, and it is I will oh, that was the other thing I wanted to show. So I'm going to make myself small one more time because I saw Dr. Honda, Dr. Kirk Honda with Seattle, Psychology in Seattle. He made a phenomenal observation about perception, and that individuals with characteristics like the ones displayed in the Baby Reindeer, that the Martha in that show, that she could only see things from her perspective and really struggled to see them from the other person's, or anything that wasn't consistent with like what she thought. Because to me, he clearly said, I just want to be friends. I just want to be friends. Thank you so much for clarifying the pounds and also euros. They guess some places they still do both. Thank you so much. I like his show. I have watched some of his other mental health coverage. He does like one episode at a time, and my ADHD, like I need like multiple. I wish he would do more together, but he does his show in a phenomenal way, and I like it. I have watched his coverage of other stuff. Um and but he normally does like one episode at a time because I also watch Love is Blind, and I watch some of his like Love is Blind coverage too. But with perspective taking, an individual with characteristics like Martha, they struggle with seeing things from somebody else's perspective. And the specific example that Dr. Honda gave in his video on this was there's this thing they do with kiddos where they put a ball under a cup. So they put a ball under this cup, and the kiddo and the researcher are in the room, and the researcher leaves the room and the ball is still under this cup. And then they switch it and they put the ball under this cup, and the researcher comes back in the room and they ask the child, where does the researcher think the ball is? Because the child should say it's over here. But before a certain age, kids will think, I know the ball is over here. So they must know what I know. But as kids get older, they realize the perspective. Oh, that they weren't in the room when the last time they were in here, the ball was over here. And that perspective taking that some individuals, because of developmental issues, because of personality traits, because of emotional immaturity, that there can be reasons why people can't do that perspective taking. It's you 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 so much patience. I can't. I have to wait for the whole series to be out because I think for the Netflix series, I think he's on episode 4, I think. I don't think he does a phenomenal job. I really, really love his coverage, and he puts a lot of great work into his videos. I think his videos take a lot of effort. I just go live and I have things. So it's Seattle, and I have a link to his video down in the description. It's Psychology in Seattle, Dr. Honda. Phenomenal coverage. I really, really liked it. And so, but I have his video on the interview down below. I personally chose to not cover as much of the interview because I'm a little I'm a little worried. I don't know. So the thing I will say about the way that Fiona reacted to all of this and the way the Piers Morgan interview went, if you watch the whole thing, and I heard another I heard another therapist or another person that was covering this say it, that if you were writing how Martha would respond to a Netflix documentary being written about them and like a part 2 of the series, it would be exactly how the Piers Morgan interview went. Like, she puts Gad down. She talks about, like, she questions his sexuality and masculinity. She makes herself, because she keeps saying that she saw it on breaking news, that it was breaking news, and that's how she found it. But, like, a play wouldn't be breaking news on BBC. In my opinion, I personally think there was either a Google alert or like you're searching for his name. Like it doesn't make sense that there was breaking news about this particular thing. And like the parts of it, like if you watch the whole interview, she contradicts herself. And she talks about having a lawyer boyfriend that she's been dating for 5 years. Um, I have question marks. To me, she didn't come off as credible. And I think some of the things were embellished, and the things that she really fought for, that's what Spidey said. So I watched Spidey's video before recording this today, and I think yes, and I believe I have his linked in the description as well. I think there probably were some things that weren't exactly the way it was in the show, but I do think emotionally and the overall view of the show, because maybe she didn't do like maybe she didn't touch him inappropriately. I don't know. Maybe there is some part of it that isn't true, but I think there's a lot. I am. I try to be, because these are real people out here. So I will tell you all because it really touched my heart. So I've been covering the Corey, uh, and I'm gonna, but it's Micciolo. I'm so bad with names, but I've been covering the Justice for Corey case. And for the first time ever, I've covered a bunch of different cases. And for the first time ever, I got an email from somebody involved with the case that just asked to clarify some of the details because they saw the coverage, and as somebody that's fighting for justice for Corey, they really, really wanted accurate information to be out there. And they personally can't, because with all the court stuff, people can't come forward and say everything now. There was Brianna's friend did an interview with Law and Crime that was really, really good. And and so I pinned a comment that has that updated information about that particular case. If you go back to either one of my videos covering that case, I pinned something there. But Spidey's video was phenomenal. It was really, really good. He mentions the eye thing because so I noticed that and for the Fiona Harvey interview, when they start, because so if you were to ask me, did you send so and so 50 emails? I'd be like, no. I wouldn't go, I wouldn't look up to try to remember or to like count, or was that it wasn't 50, it was 49. Like I wouldn't do that. And so there were things that kind of point to things not being as accurate as maybe she would like it to be on there. Um, so this part was really being addicted to going back to that producer, and I think wanting to be famous and thinking that fame might have come because I think he thought his career was done, and he did leave comedy. And I think he thought if he stayed in that situation, maybe he would have had more opportunities. Maybe that individual would have opened doors for him. And so I do think that leaving that individual and coming out of that situation, and it broke him in a way. So l- not having, because it made everything that happened more real, and it ended up impacting his relationship with his girlfriend, and everything kind of spiraled after that, in my opinion. And so I just, the way that all of that was portrayed, because often people will say, so let's talk about Cassie with the whole Diddy with the Diddy case, and that case settled, and Diddy did not admit any wrong, but people came forward and said, yeah, he did blow up my car because he was jealous of her. And there are other people that have come forward and said, we saw the the bruises, and we saw this and that. And the substances being addictive. So sometimes people, they'll get them hooked on something. That's how human trafficking can work as well. I've worked with victims of human trafficking before, and many of them, heroin's normally a big drug of choice, like that the abuser will use. But then other crack, and there will be some other ones too. It's just you see the harmer sometimes getting them addicted, and then also it incapacitates them, or it maybe yeah, in my opinion, it takes away their ability to consent, and that's very problematic. But welcome to everybody that's joining, to everybody that watches on replay. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope this was helpful. If this was triggering in any way, I do have resources down in the description. If people do have their own histories, like, please don't go into details. I do have a trigger warning. So, like, there are certain words that you can't use. So if you use like essay, like, there are certain words that if you make the comments, I have to, yeah, the comment won't post. And so and that's just to just keep the comments safe space so that things, this is triggering and enough. And then sometimes, and it's not that the words have more power, it's just that if I'm just kind of scrolling to make my comment, that sometimes there can be things that can be very triggering. And so that's why I monitor some of that. But I appreciate you all, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.